I worked for Lincare in Fayetteville, North Carolina from May 2007 till July 2007. I worked there as a service representative. My duties included going to the patient homes, checking their equipment. Their equipment included an oxygen machine. The oxygen machine tallied up the time used in hours, and I was supposed to write down these hours, um, which said how much the machine was used or how much the machine actually was ran, um, and turn this information in. Um, Sometimes I was not allowed to see the machine because either the patient was not at home or the patient didn't have time to wait on me to go in and check the machine, um, for accuracy and make sure the machine was putting out the proper um, percentage of oxygen and everything like that. So I was told by Larry Williams and Ken Wagner that even if I wasn't able to go into the house, to have someone there sign the form. And I was told that by signing the form, all it would do is show that I was there at the house because I would have a signature from one of the household members. Uh, Later on, I found out that one of the reasons they had the patient sign the form was that way they would go behind me and they would make up numbers to write down on the form. And we had to be within a certain amount of compliance every month to meet a monthly goal. And by having the patient sign the form, they could later go back and add in numbers, and it would look like there was an actual check done, and that could be tallied into the monthly total. Now, I am telling you right now that there were patient checks that were added into the monthly total that were not done. Um, I know that I handed in several blank forms with just the patient's signature on it, and these hours were added later. I found out that that was not acceptable by lincare when I had to complete a compliance training session. And uh, during the compliance training session, I found out that lincare does not approve of that type of documentation. So I went to my manager about it, which was the office manager there, and that was Carla Brackman, I believe is her last name. I told her about it. I told her that Larry um, and Ken um, basically had me fill have the patient sign these forms and then later go back and falsify the information on it. I told this to Carla, thinking something would be done. Nothing was ever done. I think she asked them about it. They denied it, and that was it. Um, Once I did that, things became pretty messed up there at work. Larry and Ken started complaining about everything that I did. When I first started working there, I was supposed to be trained by Larry because at the time Larry was the senior service rep to do my duties. He never did. He had me sign the form saying that I was trained, stating that he would get to it at a later date or he would have one of the other service reps do it. Um, some of the stuff was done, others were not. And even though they weren't done, I did sign the paper saying that I received the training, so that was my fault. I believed him when he said that. I was new, I didn't know any better. And that came back to bite me later on. But I also know that my work, my duties there, I did them to the best of my abilities with the training that I had. The workplace became a very uncomfortable place to be after I turned Larry and Ken in for falsifying those documents. Um, you know, Everything that I did was scrutinized, extremely scrutinized. Um, Larry basically told me that, my time there is going to be limited. Um, I said, well, I'll go to whoever I need to. And his reply was, do what you have to do, but I've been here longer. So I did what I did. I even sent an email to Carla. Nothing ever happened. Um, I know that I was told by a patient, well, a former patient. I was in a Walmart store, and this woman stopped me. She recognized me as being a patient, and as being the person that used to come into her home and check her equipment. Um, she stopped me and asked me if I was still working there, and I told her no, I was no longer working at lincare. And she goes, well, I figured that because it seems to me that they were trying to get you out of there. I was like, oh, really? What gave you that idea? And she goes, well, I was approached by one of the service reps, and I asked her which one, and she goes, well, I'd rather not say. I don't want to get too involved in this. I just wanted to let you know that, you know, they didn't like you being there. They didn't want you there. And I was like, well, could you at least just give me a description of the service rep? And she stated that, it was it was an older guy, and that to me would have been Larry. And I said, okay. I said, well, why do you think that they didn't want you? I mean, that they didn't want me there? And she stated that, well, she got the impression that he wanted her to call in and complain about my coming to her house, like I did something I wasn't supposed to do or whatever. And she said that she played it off like she wasn't understanding what he was saying, but she knew what the deal was. And I said, well, I'm not there anymore, so whatever happened happened, and it's water under the bridge. And I said, well, thank you anyway for the information. I really appreciate it. And then I left. And that's what made me decide to go ahead and tell this story. Um, like I said, I turned the information in to my supervisor at the time, manager supervisor, which was Carla Brackman. Nothing happened. I called Lincare's headquarters to let them know about the documents being falsified. I don't think anything happened. I think they did a brief investigation, and um, Larry denied it, and they let it go. I mean, like he would actually admit that he did that. Um, that's what I can attest to. That's what I can testify to. That's what I saw. I can only say what I personally came into contact with, and that was that I did have patients sign the forms, and I was instructed by Larry Williams to do that, and Ken Wagner backed them up on that. And Ken was like, "Yeah, we can definitely get the hours, as long as you get them to sign the form." And I did that, not really realizing what I was doing until afterwards. And then once I became a whistleblower on that situation, like I said, things became extremely hostile at work. It was just unbearable working there. I was eventually terminated because two patients called in on me, but I specifically remember Ken Wagner on the phone with a patient telling her to call in and complain about me. And I confronted him about that, and he goes, well, I just told her what her options were, you know, but I specifically heard him say that to a patient on the telephone one morning. Um, I told Carla about that. I told Carla that someone had came up to me that worked for a competing oxygen company and told me that Larry was out to get me because apparently Larry used to work for that company, that competing company, and he still has friends there. And I knew this gentleman from the other company just from running my routes and whatever. We'd run into each other every now and then. And he told me about that, and you know, and I said, well, all that just matches up. And I told him what was going on. He goes, yeah, well, if I were you, I'd just be careful and watch your back. I said, okay, thank you. And nonetheless, I was eventually let go because um, I was told the reason why it was because I had patient complaints, and which follows the whole thing of them trying to get me out of there. So that's what I wanted to say. Um, I'm not speculating. I am not, you know,